Hey guys, I want to welcome everybody to another session of the Franchise Advisory Board podcast. I've got a guest with me today that you're going to love to hear from, Erik Van Horn. And I'm going to give you a quick intro, and then I'm going to pitch it to you, Aaron. Tell us, Erik. What did I say, Aaron? Erik, tell us tell us a little bit more about yourself. So, Erik, if you don't know him already, you probably do. He's been in franchising 20 years or so. He's been with seven. He's been a Z. It's 7 different brands, and been in area development roles. He's been a franchise consultant, a top franchise consultant. He's been a franchisor. He does consulting work, and he's running mastermind groups and all sorts of different content development areas to guide franchise systems and franchisees to make good decisions. He's the founder and the host of the Franchise Secrets podcast. Erik, tell us a little bit more about you.
Dave, I like it, man. It's good to be here. And I've enjoyed you coming into my groups and providing so much value. I've been in it for 20 years. I started as a franchisee with Liberty Tax way back in the day. And I thought it was a big company at that time, realizing that they were still an emerging brand when I first started with them. But just to set it up, I was just about ready to attend law school. I was a straight C student, so law school was going to be a disaster for me. I was never going to be able to breeze through law school. I bought a truck, a lawnmower, and started a lawn business, working for a lady outside of her house. She said, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" I said, "I want to be an entrepreneur and a real estate investor." And I left that job with a contract in hand to buy her house for no money down and assume her mortgage. And I made about $20,000 in the matter of a month just by putting 2 things together: a buyer and that I had connections with, and a seller. And I sold my equity to that buyer. So I had $20,000. It's more money than I had in my entire life up to that point. And I put that into my first franchise. And so that was my seed money. And I opened up my first year in Kansas City, Missouri. And then I did pretty good my first year as a franchisee, finished in the top 10. And then went to sell franchises at Liberty Tax Corporate. Got my lessons on how to sell franchises there, and went on to become an area developer. Took a region of Austin, Texas, from 4 stores to 42 stores, and I sold that back to the parent company. And that's when I became a consultant and started doing more franchise deals as a franchisee. So that's how I got my start, man.
Yeah, it's funny. Our CTO, Kent, he had 3 Liberty Tax locations in Denver. So there's a decent chance you might have sold those to Kent.
I might have.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Well, if he's happy, then I'm sure I did. If he's not, then don't mention my name.
Couldn't have been you. Yeah. I love it. Well, hey, so guys, today, the reason I've got Erik on here is because, and there are a couple of things that we could spend probably 3 sessions talking about multiple things, but we want to focus today on the franchise development, FSOs, give you some real solid guidance and experience from a real pro about how do we work in this world, whether you're an emerging brand, mid-established, established, and growing. There's a lot that you can learn from Erik about how to engage, how to grow based upon his experience. So let's just first talk about consulting, right? Because franchise consultants, sometimes they have a bad rap. I don't think they always should, and I think it's just because people don't know how to engage them. So share some insights with us, Erik. When should you be engaging franchise consultants, in your opinion, and how do you do it to optimize that relationship?
So I'll be talking from a couple of different angles here. I was a consultant for many years and a top consultant, and then really understood the consulting side of things. I've been in the franchise development side of a number of different brands. And so I understand the relationship there. I've been a franchisor. So I'm looking at this from multiple angles. People have a love-hate relationship with franchise brokers and broker networks. I'm just using that term loosely. There's a number of larger organizations that are franchise brokerages or franchise consulting groups, and I like all of them. I'm friends with all of those guys, and so that if you want to put if you want to pour gasoline on a fire that's already started, that's a great time to go with a broker, like a brokering network. And there's multiple different ways to do it. You can stair step your way in, or just go all in with a consultant networks. And there's a number of things to do it the right way. you need to have the money to be able to invest into those relationships, just to get started. And then you really need to understand the reason that you're doing it, not just to add a few franchisees here or there. I don't think that's the best reason to use consultants. I think if you really want to grow fast and you have the resources at your corporate office to be able to sustain growth, because one of the challenges is you have success as a franchisor with consultant networks, and they destroy your brand because they put too many franchisees in your system and you weren't ready for it. So everyone thinks they're ready for it, and usually nobody is ready for it, unless you've been around the block and you've had some advisors that have experienced high growth like that and have worked with consultant groups. The other challenge is, let's say you get into a consultant network and it's crickets. You don't get the leads, or you are getting the leads and you're not closing the deals. Yeah. You're not going to last very long as a long-term in a consultant network if you're not able to get deals closed. So you need to be ready to be able to close deals, meaning selling franchisees or awarding franchises, whatever you want to say out there, whatever your terminology is, you need to be ready to do that. And most people think they're ready, but they're really not ready, because selling to a consultant lead is different than selling to an organic lead or something that comes through the website. And there's a number of different ways it's different. And I'll say one thing, and I'll pause, Dave, because I know I might be going all over the place. But if a lead comes in from a consultant versus a lead that comes in organically, that lead is most likely going to 2 to 3 to 5 other brands. And you're not just competing against like somebody getting a job or not buying a business. You're competing against the best franchise development teams in the world. Like you're competing against FSOs. You're competing against the people that have been doing it for years. And so that's really your competition, and they are really, really good at it. So there's a number of different ways to solve for that problem, but those are a few thoughts off the top of my head.
Yeah, well, there's a lot to unpack there. So I want to focus on probably 3 of those items, but let's start first with, because you described 2 scenarios, right? One, you engage the franchise consultant group or groups, broker groups, and they start to give you too many deals. And there's also and there's also crickets, right? Like where you just can't seem to get traction. And then I want to come back as a third topic to what you just described, which is, what's the true deal mechanic behind working with consultants, the multiple ZORs getting the same lead type of scenario? I think a lot of people don't understand that. Just like people when they're buying portal leads, not digging on any portals, it's the way the system works. But let's come back to that as well and talk about, because of that situation, why does it work that way? And then how do we engage properly? Because especially emerging brands, man, they don't understand that a consultant lead, they can't just sit on it and take their time and dilly-dally. Like they've got guys, that same lead might have gone over to JT and his team at HFC. And that's like a tried true like machine of like very talented friend dev folks. And they're going to lose. The new brand's going to lose. So you got to be prepped and ready and really engaged. But I want to come back to that one, because you're hitting 3, I think, real pain points in the industry. Let's talk about crickets first. So a lot of people, I've talked to a lot of ZORs that have said, man, I tried, this group or that group, and I don't want to say any of their names because they're all good. I think they just, truthfully, people don't know how to engage them properly. So what do you do if you're a franchisor and you're not really getting the traction you want? What are some things you might be doing wrong, and how do you fix that?
Well, the different groups kind of have different ways that you communicate to their consultants. So you want to find out how they communicate to their consultants. Sometimes you can email them directly. Sometimes you have to go through a portal. Sometimes it's really difficult to get to the consultants. I think the mistake that new brands make when they go into a consultant network is they look at all the top consultants and they want them because they know so-and-so did 30 deals last year, or 40 deals or 50 deals, whatever it is. And they're like, I want that person to love my brand. So I'm going to spend my time trying to get to know, the top 5 or 10 consultants in the network. And the top 5, 10 consultants in the network are like, look at the new brands, are like, that's the last thing I want to do, is try to find an unproven brand to start sending candidates to. And so, you're set up for failure is the point in that. If you're wanting the top consultants and you are a new unproven brand, because you are a new unproven brand in that inventory, you need to get traction somehow. So one, I would just start trying to provide as much valuable information to the network and the consultants within that network as possible. So if that is showcasing a lot of your franchisees, their background, the consultants need a reason to send candidates to you as a new brand. So if you have a lot of, let's say they're nurses or firefighters or military or, partnerships in your franchise, I would highlight the thing that you're good at or that you have that others might not have. And if it is just an avatar, then highlight that avatar, put that in front of them all the time. So that way, if they get the person that is that ideal avatar, that's very specific, they're like, wow, there's a bunch of happy franchisees or 1 or 2 or 3 happy franchisees at the new brand. I'm going to send this as a test over there. So don't go to these consultants and say, send me your leads. What can I do to get you to send me leads? Send me leads, send me leads. Like then it becomes about the lead, it becomes transactional and you're not providing them any real value. So I would just think of how can I provide that group new value? So or a lot of value. And it's letting them know your ideal avatar is one, and letting them know that ideal avatar are happy franchisees. So those two things, if I was a consultant and I had all of a sudden the police officer, that's the avatar in that came into my email box, I was like, okay, I'm going to give this new brand a chance. And there's a lot of consultants out there that will test out new brands, but you're getting tested. So they'll send you 2 or 3 leads to see what you can do with them, or maybe 5 leads. So when you do get those leads, treat them like gold. I'd do whatever you can, follow up with that consultant, say, hey, I just spoke with so-and-so, really liked them, and just have a lot of back and forth with the consultant and keeping them in the loop. And that will let the consultant will think, well, they're keeping me in the loop, they're pretty on it with my candidate that's in the process as well. So I could say a lot of other things, Dave, but I just want to keep talking.
Yeah, no. So this is fantastic. I want to highlight a few things that I'm hearing that I want everyone to make sure they take home from this. And also a kind of a tangential point that also is critical. I'm not a franchisor. I live in this world. So I think I am sometimes. Franchisors, especially emerging brands that don't have, beefy item 19s, proven success and track record, right? You don't have 30 people as an option for a validation call. You're a risk to a franchise consultant, right? They're going to take a measured risk if you give them enough value. But a franchisor has to think of a consultant as a client. You have to treat them like a lead. You have to nurture these guys and consider their world, right? If you put yourself in their shoes, their sometimes sole livelihood is based upon them selling they sell the franchise, you award it, right? But if you don't put yourself in those shoes and then consider how you would want to be treated, you're going to fail. And this is where I see a lot of franchise systems not succeeding with consultants, is because they don't have a process to, like you're saying, put value in front of them consistently. It's not about a one-time blast. Let's say you work with IFA. I love IFA, but there are a lot of consultants there. But if you're not regularly putting content in front of them that gives them the tools they need to promote your brand. So if you just say, here's an overview of our brand, and you send that out once, and you think you're done, you are done. You're not going to get any info. But if you regularly, maybe on a monthly basis, you're engaging with the consultants, you're saying, here's our ideal avatar. If you come across this candidate, they're going to thrive in our system. Next month, here's a case study of like a really successful franchisee that came from a consultant. Next month, here are three things that are completely unique about our business model that will get your people pumped to discuss franchising. You have to think about, how do I feed them info that's going to help them sell a franchise? That's all they care about. So those are a couple of my thoughts on that. Erik, how would you respond?
So I was just thinking, I'm a franchisor in a brand. I can't name it right now, but I'm involved as a franchisor. And if we wanted, so this is going to be like a dirty trick. Like if I wanted to just crush it in the consultant groups, I would go out, and I don't know that we're going to go into the consultant groups with a bang with this particular brand. I'm just not sure if we're ready for that yet. But let's say we were. We were ready. Everything was firing on all cylinders. We're ready. I have a great organic, a great franchise development person that is great with organics, crushing it with organics. It doesn't know the first thing about working with brokers. And I could go in there and I could tell the brokers, this person is, here's his deal to close rate. This is what she does on, X, Y, and Z. And the broker's going to be like, I don't care. They're not used to working with consultants or brokers. So what I would do is I would go and find a franchise development person that is very well known and respected in the consultant networks, hire them. And this is what that says to the top consultants in these networks. I love this person. They're used to working my leads. They're always good with my leads and my candidate. And for them to take a chance on this brand, I'm going to take a chance on them, because if so-and-so is going with this brand, this emerging brand, they must see something, and I'm going to give them a chance. And that's probably the best way, but you're going to be paying a bunch of money for that person, but that's probably the best way. The opposite of everything I just said is also true. It's going to be harder if the development rep doesn't know how to work with brokers, how to communicate with them, how to deal with them, what kind of lead it is. So the opposite of everything, the opposite of the reason that I would hire that really good rockstar development person is also true on what not to do.
Yeah, well, let's dive into that a bit, because you're hitting a nail on the head. A lot of people don't even know exists, which is, why am I not getting engagement? Why am I not getting traction? This whole industry. I love franchising because it is all driven. Relationships and trust fuel this industry. It's not like high tech where it's like, well, flashy gadgets and checkbox sales works. It doesn't work that way. And the consultant relationships, if you really want to kill it as a brand, I think you're talking about making a significant investment in that guy or gal that's a rock star in the franchise consulting network. That's one route to success. But let's say they can't do that. Let's say they've got to make a more gradual play at building rapport, building trust. How do you recommend a franchise brand with an internal salesperson that might be crushing with organic? How can they start to develop that? Because over time, long-term play, emerging brands, on personal opinion, I don't think it's a wise idea to go right into consulting. I think that's a mistake. And I think we should talk about that. But
I agree with that 100%.
But they've got to invest, because at some point in their life cycle, consultants are absolutely the direction they should go, or FSOs or whatever, right? We'll talk about that too. But first, let's talk about why is it a bad idea? And then I want your advice on, even though today it's a bad idea, when does it become a good idea to work with consultants in my life cycle as a franchisor? And then how do I start to develop that if I'm not going to go hire a home run all-star to buy the relationships and then start to leverage those?
Man, we could go so many different places. So the question on the table right now is, how should a brand go into a consulting network if they don't have the resources to be a rock star? Is that the question?
Let's start with that question. Yeah.
So what I would do is I would go into one or two of the networks, probably not the most expensive networks, go into some of the least expensive networks, and think about that as your proving ground. So if you can go in there and do well, then you have a story to tell the other networks that are more expensive to get into. And you can say, I spent a year learning the broker world. We've got X amount of leads and X amount of deals out of that. So here's our closing rate. And now we're getting more and more leads from these because it says they're happy. So if you're getting more traction with the network that you've been a part of for a year, and then you go tell that story to other consulting networks, they will, and their consultants will look at them like, there's something there. I may not see it yet, but they are having success, and this brand should be on my radar. So even when I would be at conferences, and there'd be brands that would get up there, and maybe they're not getting a lot of traction at the company that I was with, they would say, hey, we're not getting a bunch of deals done with you guys, but over at these other two networks, we're crushing it with them. We're on stage there. And that tells me, like, they know something that I don't know. They just got traction there and they didn't get it with us. So there's something that I'm missing there. So if you plant that, if you think about just going there to learn and to get some deals done so you can grow and scale from there, that's probably the best way to do it. And that development person is critical. So you can groom them. I've seen a lot of franchise development people become groomed in the franchise network, franchise consulting networks. They started out as a nobody, and then they really grew into that. And you're doing that development person a favor. You bring them into a consulting network, and all of a sudden they're not talking to dead leads all the time. They're talking to people that actually want to talk to them. They're playing a higher level game, and you're building value in that person. So that's the way that I would do it.
Yeah, let me highlight something that I heard you allude to, but I think a lot of people don't do, which is if you're doing franchise development, and if you're a franchisor, you are. If you're not, very well, you're not going to be around.
No.
But or you're fully saturated and you're not listening to this anyway, right? So, but you have to track metrics, and there are specific metrics that franchise consultants salivate over, and one of which is, how many deals did you close? What was your conversion rate from broker leads, especially broker leads from my network? If you have that data, so a lot of people have basic information, but you need to be tracking lead flow by network. If you're working with multiples, you need to know what my conversion, my deal rate is. How many of those do I convert into even a discovery day? Or how many of those move into an agreement? How many of those move to close? If you have the data behind that, then you can have really intelligent conversations that will make these consultants say, oh, really? So, yeah, and like you're saying, let's say you're working with FCC, or let's say you're working with the Entrepreneur Source or FranChoice, FranServe, whoever you're working with, right?
I think we named all of them.
Yeah, and there are more, right? You've got
FranNet,
and then you've also got the smaller boutique ones. You got Carl and his team over at the U Network, and a bunch of kind of emerging smaller boutique groups. But let's say you approached Red, and you're like, hey, Red, by the way, like, this is my conversion rate over at the Entrepreneur Source. He'd be like, excuse me? And like, all of a sudden, you've got Red Boswell focused on, okay, we got to figure out what's going on there. And I want my people to do something different here. So you can mobilize their hierarchy. You can get webinars. Like, there's a lot you can do when you have that data. And you can say, and that's the hook that will get them interested. And then you can explain why. Like, this is our close rate over here. This is what we're doing. And this is how we're succeeding. Now you've got two groups that are firing on all cylinders and interested. So you track the data. The data tells a story that gets people interested in validating maybe your emerging brand that doesn't have a lot of other data. That's a good data point. I just want to highlight
exactly because the consultant networks know these numbers. They know the better consultants have a deal, a lead or a application to close ratio of 1 in 3. They know that the best, a lot of the good brands are 1 in 5, 1 in 7 leads to close. So they know that. And if you know that and you can play at those numbers, you're going to get attention for sure.
Yeah. And let's talk about the flip side of that too, right? As the franchisor, you also need to know, like, the consulting world has such a strata of talent, right? A lot of people kind of stumble into it. A lot of people go there and just are total rock stars. You also need to be tracking that data to know, okay, which consultants are sending me leads that are converting and which ones are not. So the flip side of that is also true. You want that data to know, okay, this consultant, ideally you need to be able to track it by consultant and say, well, this network, at least at a minimum, I'm getting a much lower conversion rate on my lead to award versus this network. So something else you want to look at is comparative analysis and make sure you're treating them all the same, right? Same process. But then you can say, my investment in this network is not paying the same dividends as my investment in this network. Let's figure out why. And if we can't fix it, then I'll find another one, right? So you need to be careful and treat them as a lead source as well. I think, Dave Hansen's opinion here. Tell me what you think about that, the kind of the flip side of that equation.
Well, yeah, 100%. And I think the way to solve some of those issues on a poor close rate, because probably you're getting the wrong leads, or you have problems in your process. But let's say you're getting the wrong leads or candidates from the consulting networks. That probably means you are not doing a good enough job of communicating who it is that you want. And this is the truth. All new brands going into consulting networks are going to get the wrong leads, and new brands because the consultants just don't know your brand. So
Yeah.
you need to just continue to educate. And if you're getting the wrong leads, financially not qualified, sales background when they should have just, a CPA background or whatever it is, you're getting the wrong type of person. You need to tell the consultants there so they start sending you the right ones, or else it's just going to be a downward spiral from there. So, and I think that's also the most important thing that you can do is be super clear with these consultants on your ideal avatar and get specific, because worst thing that a consultant wants to hear is anybody that wants to be absentee, anybody that wants a full-time job. Like, you need to get specific so they remember your brand, your name with that avatar. Don't be general. Don't try to be the jack of all trades, because everybody tries to do that. And then you're just competing with everybody else.
Yeah, you're nobody, right? If you do it the same way as everybody else, then you don't exist to these consultants, especially if you're a new brand. Unless you're like Smash My Trash and they're selling out like hotcakes, then everyone's like, wait. But most brands are not that. Your brand is not that, right? Very few people do that.
Correct.
So a couple of thoughts. One is, I'm going to ask you a question, and then I'm going to lead into another question. So bear with me on this one. As a consultant, when you would send off a lead to an emerging brand, and then the deal didn't close, tell me how you felt about that.
So what I would do is I need to see that was a buyer. So the consultant, usually you're sending it to a few different brands. I would send it to a few different brands, and either that person was a buyer or not. And that's why my lead to close ratio is 1 in 3. So I was pretty good at working with buyers. But early on, I would send leads. I was sending leads to the wrong brands with the people that couldn't close. And that was the problem. So I would be disappointed because I knew better than them, until I got to the point where I would send them the good brands with good development reps that would educate them and close them. Then then I had complete trust in them, and I was hands off, and it was their deal to win or lose. And hopefully they did the right thing.
Yeah, so, I want to highlight something, because it's a leading question, but if you're trying to work with an emerging brand, there are a lot of emerging brands that don't know how to engage consultants, which is kind of the point, right?
Yep.
But if you're sending them leads, one, they are sending that lead to multiple brands. So you just said that, but I want to highlight that point. So it's almost like a portal lead, but way better, right? These are qualified people that should be buyers at this point, but it's going to the franchise consultant wants to close a deal, and they want to close a good deal. Let's give them credit for that, right? So they're going to send it to, let's say, 3 or 4 brands that they feel are the right match for that particular candidate. Any one of them could close, and the consultant's happy. It doesn't have to be your brand. But if it's not closing with your brand, and you know why, as the franchisor, you've got to communicate with the consultant. You got to tell them, hey, by the way, deal didn't close, but this is why. It turns out this and this and this. He's got the wrong skill set match for this position. This would be a better match. Like if you're proactive as a ZOR and you communicate back to the consultant as to why it didn't close, they're not going to cut off lead flow to you. But if they send you leads that aren't closing, over time, it's the performers get the leads. The whole system works that way. So if you're closing the deals, they're going to send you more leads because they're building trust. If you're not closing deals, but you want to build trust, use it as a coaching moment to let the consultant know why it wasn't a good fit. And then they won't discount you and stop sending you leads. At least that's personal opinion.
So put yourself in the development rep's shoes of that they just lost the deal, and they know that they're still looking at 2 other companies. That your job is to absolutely what Dave just said, and then take it just another step further, communicate to that candidate, to that lead. Boy, you're looking at some really great brands over there. Those other 2, fantastic brands. And you are working with a fantastic consultant. Keep listening to consultant A, B, or C, and you're in really good hands with them. So if you do that, that's another thing that all the best brands, and JT would say that. I'm actually on with JT next after this, Dave. But yeah, nice. JT would do that all the time. I've heard him say it many times. That's what really good development reps and franchisors do.
Yeah, awesome. I just realized, I looked at the time. We probably better start wrapping up here, Erik. But I think that is the if you want to summarize this very quickly, in my words, you have to take a partner approach to building a relationship with each consultant. And that is a true partner approach, right? Whether or not you can close or award the franchise or not, you want to make sure that candidate goes back to that consultant feeling like they're working with an all-star. And reinforcing that another brand is a good option, guys. Don't be myopic. There are good options out there. Franchising is a great business model in general. So if you're not the one that's going to win it, don't burn a bridge, because that person that might not have been a good fit today for whatever reason might have killer success with one brand and then say, man, I really liked the guy that I spoke to over there. He was honest and truthful with me about my experience in buying a franchise. I might want to go and become a multi-unit owner across different brands. They might come back to you and buy, or better yet, refer their friends to you, right? Yeah,
that's exactly. I've seen people refer friends to brands that they didn't buy because of that, because they were treated the right way.
Yep. Amen. So we need to get back together, Erik. I appreciate your time today. Again, guys, Erik Van Horn. If you don't know him yet, find him on LinkedIn. Check out his podcast, Franchise Secrets, because there is so much good content that can come out of this guy. So thanks again, Erik, for joining us.
Dave, it's a pleasure. Good to see you. Always good chatting. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks.